Look at that.
For time wise, since I didn't read, we didn't do DR, we didn't write. I would just read for like 5-10 minutes, and then that way we could just do stories at the end of the day. So I think if we start a story now, obviously, then we're going to be stopped and we're going to be real wild and crazy, and then I have to calm you down. So I think I'll just read for, if we started the store at 2:15, Bill goes 15 minutes per store. Okay. Yeah.
Once the patrols leave, can we still do the store?
No, we'll have our stuff getting picked up and that. So yeah. All right. So here we go. Chapter 8. Huh?
Are we gonna just read for 2 minutes?
No, we're gonna read till 2:15.
Oh.
So like
What time is it?
there's a clock right there.
I don't know how to
All right, here we go.
use your resources.
Chapter 8, retaliation. Remember, he put the ceiling for a moment. Rolling over, he saw that Kendra was not in her bed. Daylight streamed through the window. He stretched, arching his back with a groan. The mattress felt inviting. Maybe he could get up later. No, he wanted to. So many flavors. And they never clashed like they should, Lena said, taking a bite herself. Feet bare, hair sticking up. Seth trotted into the room. Good morning, he said. Having breakfast? You have to try this calico bread, Kendra said. In a minute, he replied. Can I have a cup of hot chocolate? Lena filled the mug. Thank you. And she handed it to him. I'll be right back. I forgot something upstairs. He hurried off, drinking from the mug. He's so weird, Kendra said, taking a bite of what now tasted like banana nut bread. Up to some mischief, if you ask me, Lena replied. Seth set the mug on the dresser. Taking a calming breath, he prayed that the tarantula would be gone and the fairy would be there. He slid the drawer open. A hideous little creature glared up from inside the jar. Baring pointy teeth, it hissed at him. Covered in brown, leathery skin, it stood taller than his finger. It was bald and had tattered ears, a narrow chest, a pot belly, and shriveled, spindly limbs. The lips were frog-like, the eyes a glossy black, the nose a pair of slits above the mouth. What did you do to the fairy? Seth asked. The ugly creature hissed again, turning around. It had a pair of nubs above the bony shoulder blade. The nubs wiggled like the remnants of amputated wings. Oh no, what happened to you? The creature stuck out a long black tongue and slapped the glass with calloused hands. It jabbered something in a foul, raspy language. What had happened? Why had the beautiful fairy mutated into a revolting little devil? Maybe some milk would help. Seth snatched the jar from the door, grabbed the mug from the dresser, and bolted down the stairs from the attic to the hall. He dashed into the bathroom, locking the door behind him. The mug was still a third full. Holding the jar over the sink, he poured some of the hot chocolate onto the lid. Most ran down the side of the jar, but a little dripped through the holes in the top. One drop plopped on the creature's shoulder. It angrily motioned for Seth to unscrew the lid, and then pointed at the cup. Apparently, it wanted to drink straight from the mug. Seth examined the room. The window was shut, the door locked. He wadded a towel against the space at the bottom of the door. Inside the jar, the creature made pleading motions and pantomimed drinking from the cup. Seth unscrewed the lid. With a powerful leap, the creature jumped out, landing on the counter. Crouching, snarling, it glared at Seth. I'm sorry your wings fell off, he said. This might help. He held the mug out toward the creature, wondering if it would sip the flavored milk or just climb inside the cup. Instead, it snapped at him, barely missing his finger. Seth jerked his hand away, sloshing the hot chocolate onto the counter. Hissing, the agile creature dropped to the floor, raced over the bathtub, and vaulted inside. Before Seth could react, the creature squirmed down the drain. A final garbled burst of complaints issued from the dark hole, and then the creature was gone. Seth poured the remnants of the hot chocolate into the drain in case it could be used to the deformed fairy. He looked back at the jar, empty now except for a few wilting flower petals. He was not sure what he had done wrong, but he doubted Maddox would be very proud. Later that morning, Seth sat in the treehouse, trying to find puzzle pieces that fit together. Now that the perimeter was finished, adding pieces was a challenge. They all looked the same. He had avoided Kendra all morning. He did not feel like talking to anyone. He could not get over how foul the fairy had become. He was not sure what he had done, but he knew it was somehow his fault, some accidental consequence of catching the fairy. That is why she had been so frightened the night before. She knew he had doomed her to change into an ugly little monster. The puzzle pieces started to vibrate. Soon the whole treehouse was trembling. Were they having an earthquake? He had never been in an earthquake before. Seth ran to the window. Fairies hovered everywhere, gathered in the air all around the treehouse. Their arms were raised, and they seemed to be chanting. One of the fairies pointed at Seth. Several glided closer to the window. One held her palm out in the direction. With a flash of light, the window pane shattered. Seth jumped away from the window as several fairies flew in. He ran to the hatch, but the treehouse lurched so violently that he fell to the floor. The shaking was becoming intense. The floor was no longer level. A chair tipped over. The door to the hatch had slammed shut. He crawled toward it. Something hot stung the back of his neck. Multicolored lights began flashing. Seth grabbed the door to the hatch, but it would not open. He tugged hard. Something seared the back of his hand. Panicked, he returned to the window, struggling to keep his balance as the floor quaked beneath him. The flock of fairies continued to chant. He could hear their little voices. With a loud crack, the treehouse suddenly tilted sideways. The view out the window switched from the fairies to the rapidly approaching ground. Seth experienced a momentary sensation of weightlessness. Every object in the treehouse was floating, and everything plummeted together. Puzzle pieces filled the air, and then the treehouse imploded. Kendra smeared sunblock across her arm, disliking the greasy feel of the lotion against her skin. She was tanner than she was when she first arrived, but the sun was hot today, and she didn't want to take any chances. Her shadow was a small puddle at her feet. It was almost noon. Lunch was not far off, and then Grandpa Sorensen would take them to the granary. Kendra quietly hoped she would see a unicorn. Suddenly, she heard a tremendous crash from the corner of the yard. Then she heard Seth screaming. What could have made such a huge noise? She did not have to run far in order to see the broken pile of rubble at the base of the tree. Seth was sprinting toward her. His shirt was torn. He had blood on his face. Scores of fairies appeared to be in pursuit. Her initial thought was to make a joke about the fairies wanting revenge for him to try to catch them, until she realized it was probably true. Had the fairies thrown down the treehouse? They're after me, he yelled. Jump in the pool, Kendra called. Seth swerved in the direction of the pool and began pulling off his shirt. The ominous cloud of fairies had no trouble keeping up with him. They hurled sparkling streams of glitter. Casting his shirt aside, Seth sprang into the water. The fairies are after Seth, Kendra cried, watching in horrified dismay. The fairies hovered above the pool. After a few moments, Seth surfaced. In flawless synchronization, the cloud of fairies swooped, diving toward him. He yelled as blazing rays of light began flaring around him, and ducked underwater again. The fairies plunged after him. He came to the surface, gasping. The water churned. Seth floundered at the center of the underwater pyrotechnic display. Kendra rushed to the edge of the pool. Help, he cried, raising a hand out of the water. His fingers were fused together like a flipper. Kendra screamed, They're attacking, Seth! Help! Somebody! They're attacking! He flailed toward the side of the pool. The rolling mass of fairies converged on Seth again, hauling him to the bottom of the pool amid eerie bursts of light. Kendra ran and seized the pool skimmer, swinging it at a relentless horde of fairies, never touching any of them, no matter how dense the swarm appeared. Seth resurfaced to the edge of the pool and threw his arms up onto the flagstones, trying to drag himself out of the water. Kendra stopped to assist him, but shrieked instead. One arm was broad, flat, and rubbery. No elbow, no hand. A flipper coated his human skin. The other was long and boneless, a fleshy tentacle with limp fingers at the end. She looked at his face. Long tusks curved down from a wide, lipless mouth. Patches of hair were missing. I know, but this is exciting. Patches of hair were missing. His eyes were glazed with terror. The frenzied fairies mobbed him again, and he lost his grip on the side, vanishing in another pulsing succession of colored flashes. Steam sizzled up from the seething water. What is the meaning of this? Grandpa Sorensen hollered, hustling to the edge of the pool. Lena followed behind him. The water in the pool flickered a few more times. Many of the fairies whizzed away. A few flew over to Grandpa. One fairy in particular chirped angrily. She had short blue hair and silver wings. He did what? Grandpa said. An unrecognizable monstrosity heaved itself out of the water and lay panting on the flagstones. The deformed creature had no clothes. Lena crouched beside him, placing a hand on his side. He had no idea that would happen, Grandpa complained. It was innocent. The fairy twittered her disapproval. Kendra gaped at the freakish form of her brother. Most of his hair had fallen out, revealing a lumpy scale stifled with mold. His face was broader and flatter, with sunken eyes and tusks the size of bananas protruding from his mouth. A misshapen hump swelled high above his shoulders. On the back below the hump were blowholes puckered for air. His legs had united into a single crude tail.